Hello, my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another book rant. Today I'm going to be covering this book, Orconomics. Now, Orconomics is from 2019, and I bought it in 2021. I think I read it in December of 2021, and I absolutely loved it. As I expressed in my year in review for 2022, I finished this book in late 2021, but one of the first books I bought was Son of a Lich, which is the sequel to it and is right behind me on the shelf. Orconomics is a satire. It is fantasy satire, but it emphasizes the economy. The way it works is that the Adventurers Guild is absolute. Heroes succeed or die trying. Technically, it isn't die trying, but they either win and anyone that flees gets picked off by an enforcer. So, because what the public sees is either heroes succeeding or adventurers failing, they either see the positive or they see the threat is bigger than those heroes, and so bigger heroes need to come in to defeat it. This is propped up by a banking system that gauges threat based on the strength and the power of the threat and factors in the probable size of its hoard. It assumes that every monster wants wealth or will hoard wealth or will stash away the treasure of someone it kills. So, a dragon is a severe threat, it is strong, it is powerful, and it is likely to be hoarding away a lot of wealth. A hippogriff that starts nesting on someone's farm is dangerous and deadly, and because of its large nest and the difficulty of an appraiser to scout out that nest, it is assumed to be worth a lot. Adventurers can't do their job using just the wealth they have, so they get sponsorships from companies across the kingdom. These sponsorships then give them material wealth in exchange for a percent of the profit. People go out there hoping that they will succeed in their quest, and if they do, they bring back however much was there. I need to make a correction. When I said hippogriff earlier, what I really should have said was griffin. I needed to check my notes. But in this book, they use an example of a griffin that begins nesting on a farmer's property. The farmer has claim to that land, and so he has claim to putting that quest on the board. When he puts that quest on the board and he has that claim, he has a claim to a certain amount of profit from the defeat of that griffin. Griffins are known to be deadly and incredibly hard to defeat, and so that increases the risk inherent in the job. That risk inherent elevates the level of party needed to defeat it. Because griffins are very dangerous, the appraiser went out there and estimated the value of the griffin's hoard to be fairly high. And so all the loot would be brought back to the guild, and the carcass of the griffin would be brought back as well. Any reagents, any materials, any supplies from the dead griffin get factored into the profit from the quest. And then all the sponsors, all the people who have their hands in the pot, take their portions for ingredients or material wealth. I think from what I recall reading, the griffin ends up having very little, and the only profit gained is in the carcass. And so a lot of the investors lose out because they don't get a return equal to or greater than what they put in. But the banking system makes money regardless. These companies are paying the bank, saying they expect that there will be a certain amount of profit, and so they have that level of insurance. The bank insures them for whatever. The bank makes money regardless. So even on a griffin, which yields very little wealth, the bank has made their cut. And so the banking system rules, effectively, the guild system. Now, the banking owners are Goldson and Baggs, which pokes fun and alludes to Goldman Sachs, which is a real-world bank. Now, the book itself, that's the setting details that matter for a lot of the convoluted plots in this book. But the main plot itself follows effectively a suicide squad. A priest of an insane deity believes himself to be a prophet and is writing down the notes that come to his mind from his deity. And so he is a believer in a certain prophecy and brings together certain people to fulfill that prophecy. He believes in, I think it's the seventh hero, and so he brings together 6 people believing himself to be that 7th hero. The first main character we are introduced to is Gorm Ingerson. He is a berserk. He is the berserk. He's a dwarf, and all berserks are dwarves. He was on the greatest party ever, but when they fought a lich, he was hit with some magic and fled. Now, usually an enforcer would off him before he could get back to society. He would be a killed in action. But Gorm Ingerson was both too socially powerful for it. He was an inspiration to many dwarves and a well-known hero across all the lands. And he was also just physically too powerful to kill. So he was left to squander his life away. He would never get good quests again. He would never be able to berserk again because he lost his he lost his motivation for that berserk. And so he ends up an alcoholic, a hobo, by the start of the book. And he saves a goblin from being killed, not out of any compassion for the goblin, but because the goblin trips over him and an adventurer tries to kill the goblin and grapples basically overtop his body. He instead suggests, why don't we determine what you need for this quest? The quest requires Goblin Ear to confirm that the goblin has been killed. The newbie adventurer is suggested you leave it alive and cut off a notch from its ear to confirm that you killed the goblin. And instead, when there's a new goblin that is out there that is a quest is brought out for, you can kill the same goblin and reward yourself double for this quest. Gorm then takes the goblin in as his squire, and the plot starts moving forward. Other characters within the main group are Geist, a member from the same party that Gorm had been. He had seen Geist die, or thought he had, and Geist now is a mute that seems to take any mission he can. Geist was their weapon master, one of their warriors. Geist, mute, seems to recognize Gorm, but does not react to Gorm. Additional characters are a bard who is running from a Benny Hook hand and claims he is not a thief. He never has been a thief, and he won't ever again be a thief, because if he is caught thieving by Benny Hookhand, there are major repercussions. Instead, he's the bardish sleep with every girl he can archetype. There's also a pyromaniac who seems to burn everything that she can and is only in her apprentice robes because one mage on her council is restricting her from becoming a full-fledged mage. As it turns out, that single vote on the council is also in the group, and he is a more by-the-book traditional wizard, or at least traditional within the settings traditions. He is there for his own reasons and really keeps quiet about why an established mage is on this trip. The last character is an elf ranger. Elves in this series, in this setting, seem to be immortal, but their memories start slipping away, and so for every couple hundred years, they're effectively a new person. This elf ranger has become addicted to restorative potions. The effect of healing can be addictive in this setting, and she cuts herself so that she can have a reason to drink a potion. And so she has an extremely large supply of healing potions and tries to break them out for every opportunity she can, even if it's a simple scratch. Thus compiled, the characters are told that a certain MacGuffin, effectively, has been stolen, and it is claimed by two peoples, the orcs and the elves. The elves allegedly looted it from an orc horde in a previous war, and it has been in that one clan's treasury for centuries. The orcs have claim to it because it is spiritual to them, it is sacred to them, and it is imperative that it return to their people. And so Gorm is given this information and is asked to go out there and find the item and to return it to its rightful owners. It is specifically worded vaguely because, as you discover, the rightful owners, or rather, the plotters and schemers of this story, they want Gorm to take sympathy for the orcs and to return it to them, thus triggering what would become the plot of the second book. And the reader can come to the conclusion before the characters do. When I was reading it, I understood what was going to happen in the climax before the characters came to the conclusion. But what made it work was how those characters came to that conclusion, and the payout in the end was so cathartic and so fun that it works. This book was absolutely hilarious. I've read it several times since December of 2021, and I'm going to keep on coming back to it. It is deserving of every bit of praise it gets. This J. Zachary Pike writes very convincing satire, but that takes itself seriously. Eventually, the plot coalesces, and all these different moving parts come together in one major showdown at the end. And ultimately, the Suicide Squad does not die like they were supposed to. And their success is unexpected, but still useful to the plotters and schemers. Ultimately, this book deals with a lot of language that assumes that you have some understanding of fantasy and role-playing game and those kinds of tropes, but it does not require that. And the glossary does a good job of explaining the setting and all these terms. And all these terms are allusions to tropes, but are not themselves beholden to those tropes. I bought this full price, and I would buy this book again. I am eagerly waiting for the sequel of Son of a Lich to come out. This is the Dark Prophet Saga. Orconomics is book 1, Son of a Lich is book 2. I am eagerly waiting for book 3, Dragonfired, to come out. This is engaging, funny, witty, wholesome at times, and action-packed writing. If you like fantasy, you're going to like this book, even in spite of the satiric elements. Anyway, my name is Wildstag, and thank you for tuning in to another book rant.